She was so nice, I brought her back twice. Thanks for joining. My name's Dave Miller. I am the Unpleasant Blind Guy, and I am here with show host and adjunct professor Melanie Collette once again to talk about the first 100 days of the Trump presidency. And Melanie, for those who are new listeners on the Western Free Radio Network, let's do what I should have done last week and get you to tell us just a little bit about yourself, your background, and then we'll get into it.
Okay. I have a radio show of my own called Money Talk with Melanie on SHR Media and High Plains Talk Radio. Also, I'm an adjunct professor, as you mentioned, at Rowan University in the computer science department. And I'm a former public school teacher. So that's my background, generally. I'm also pretty active in the Republican Party. I'm the first vice president of the New Jersey Federation of Republican Women. So that's about it.
Okay. So you're interested and you expound on all things politics with a strong business overtone. Is that correct?
I would say so. Business and economics, domestic, and as well as foreign and kitchen table too, because all of these things affect us at our kitchen table is the bottom line. And many people don't realize that it does. And so one of the things that my show aims to do is educate people in that regard so that we can kind of complete the circle of effect as to how foreign policy, domestic policy, and local policy in the context of finance affects our personal finance. And I try to have entrepreneurs and innovators and things like that as guests on the show, as well as former politicians and economists and people from think tanks that can bring finance from many different perspectives to my listeners so that they can get kind of a well-rounded education and a well-rounded perspective of economics and business and finance, no matter what level they might be.
Well, and that's what attracts me to people like you who commentate on that level, because in the end, it does all come down to the kitchen table, to the family, to the individual, and that's something I can appreciate. Now, last week we left with your belief that President Trump is a somewhat more prayerful president, you believe, than, let's say, President Obama might have been or other presidents in the past might have been. Certainly, I find it interesting that in some of the meetings that they have now, he will start the meeting with a prayer. Before President Trump was elected, in fact, at the start of the election, I had said to some people that I wasn't even sure that he wanted to be president. I didn't know whether he was just up there pulling everybody's chain. I didn't know whether he was treating it all like it was a joke. His motivations for being there, for me, really were ambiguous. I just didn't think that he was serious about this. And then it turned out, evidently, he was serious about this. So there was a big question in my mind as to who this man was, and I'll tell you frankly, I was a Jindal supporter at first, and then I was a Cruz supporter, and then when Trump got the nomination, I went ahead and threw my support behind him because I thought then, and I still think, that he would be a better president than Hillary Clinton. And infused in a lot of this, as time went on, we saw him having discussions and things with clergy, and that is the question to me. Now, you believe that he is a more prayerful president. Do you think he's what is known as a baby Christian?
Yes, I would say he's an embryo Christian. No, I'm kidding. But
I am so going to leave that in.
No, but I do believe he is. And I actually agree with you with what you said about him not being serious at first. And to be honest with you, I truly believe that this is how it went. That at first he really wasn't serious, and that the country was ready for him, and that he realized that he might have had a calling, that he really could help. And then he got serious. That's really what I think happened. I don't really think he intended on carrying it through. Quite honestly, I don't. Well, like when it first started, but when he realized that the people were standing behind him and that people really wanted change and really were supporting him, I think that that's when he got serious about it. listen, and that's purely conjecture on my part, but that's what I think happened. Because I feel like there was a turning point in the election, and I can't point it out right now, but
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there was a point in the election cycle where it was like, okay, he really is like wanting to do this. You know what I mean? Just by the way he was acting. Well, you know what? When he got Kellyanne Conway and actually started listening, I think that's when I was like, okay, he really does want to win this thing. He's really serious.
Mm,
So,
okay, okay. Well, that's legitimate enough because I don't think I was the only one that was kind of scratching my head at first, and obviously I wasn't. Now, his embryonic, shall we say, or baby Christianity, I think is very important here because of influence in the White House. It seems that President Trump, unlike a real conservative, and we spoke about this before, you and I, that he is not a conservative, reacts more on an emotional level to things. And you see this in his actions on Twitter and things of that nature, and most recently in his actions involving voter fraud, which I have to say I admire because every election cycle, and it becomes worse every time,
yes.
there are accusations of voter fraud, and then once the election is over, that goes away. So I'd like seeing that this is going to be investigated. But the spin that's being put on it is that Trump believes he would have won the popular vote if it had not been for voter fraud. Now, personally, it doesn't matter to me as to why this is being investigated. It is just, in my mind, high time that it is investigated. Question is about his access and how he acts on things emotionally and the Christian influence. Do you believe at this point, because there are several forces working in the White House, one of them being the Christian force, do you believe that he is being more favorably stroked, let us say, into action by his newfound Christianity? Or are other influences at work? What's your impression?
I think his blatant Christianity works against, I think it makes Democrats hate him more, most definitely. I think that's just an irritant. It's like salt in the wound
Mm-hmm.
for Democrats. It's like it's bad enough that they lost, but then what do they hate more than God? Like the flag? You know, what do
Mm-hmm.
liberals
Mm-hmm.
hate more than God? And for him to be so like blatant with it. Now, as far as Trump's emotions, part of him being in his infancy with his Christianity is how emotional he is. Some of it is his personality, but some of it is also him not really understanding and him being immature as a Christian and him not understanding that a mature Christian doesn't do things like tweet as soon as you get upset. You understand?
Yes,
You
I
know what I'm
do.
saying? Like the Apostle Paul said, you know, all things that are lawful are not advantageous. Just because you're right doesn't mean you have to say it all the time because it's not to your advantage to do so. Sometimes quiet is golden. Just be quiet. You can be a Christian and be every little bit right, but it's not always to your advantage to shout that from the rooftop. And he's hurting himself and he's hurting the party a lot, and especially here lately. It's a shame because he has the opportunity to do a lot of good, but his immaturity in general, his political immaturity combined with his Christian immaturity is just really hurting him when he's in a position to do some really good things. And it's a distraction and it's a shame.
Well, do you think that he will get, or that possibly the people can influence him to get for himself among all of the other instructions that as president anyone has to? And let's not fool ourselves. President is a job. I don't care if you've been groomed for it for life. You don't really understand it until you step into it.
Right.
Do you think that he and the country would be advantaged if he had some more instruction, more close instruction by, let's say, a White House chaplain or someone like that, that he could meet with for, well, 15, 20 minutes a day, something like that, and just go over some things involving Christianity and things like forgiveness, because I have to tell you, um,
Yeah.
I still struggle with forgiveness. I
Well,
really
look,
do.
we all do, right?
Yeah.
We all do. Listen, if I ruled the world, everybody would get that, right?
Uh huh.
15 or 20 minutes a day with a chaplain or a spiritual advisor, just meditating on something positive or just some kind of mentoring or advice on, like, this is what you really need to be working on a spiritual level. How much better would the world be if we had that, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
or so or if everyone just prayed for direction in that regard. How can I be better? How can I do better? You know what I mean?
Yes.
But and I'm not sure that he is. It takes a long time to get to a place in your Christian walk where you do that, and a great deal of humility, which going to be a minute before the Donald gets there.
Well, yeah. I mean, a
you
man
know,
who is as bombastic and as showbiz as he is used to being,
right?
it is going to take time for him to get there, I think. And see if you agree with this. It could well be possible that he could have enough of a public persona that is still the Donald that people like, and be a prayerful and considerate man in the background. We were talking about Frederick Douglass in the Shermans earlier at Lonnie Poindexter's Lion Chasers Radio, which you folks can hear from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on Urban Family Talk. And we were talking about Frederick Douglass and his influence on President Lincoln. And that influence came the whole time he was in office, and of course, presidents after, as far as Frederick Douglass goes. But could we see a different, more mature, more solid, and more Christian President Trump, say 3.5 years from now, when he starts to make his 2020 run, than we do now? You think that's possible?
I think that's possible, especially in the position that he's in. I think that he is in a greater position to see God work just because of the position that he's in, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
The position of power that he is in and the things that he's involved in that we have no idea about puts him in a position to see God work in ways that we probably cannot imagine. So I would imagine that as he sees that and as his Christian mentors point things out to him, that will mature him over time if he allows it. But he's got to allow it, and it has to be very hard with all the power that he has and all the money that he has
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do that. I mean, I don't envy him in that regard. It's got to be very difficult because, like I said earlier, it takes a level of humility to, in essence, subject yourself to a higher power when you are literally pretty much the most powerful man in the free world. So so that's an incredible undertaking for him, I would think.
Wow. No, since you mentioned it this second time, it actually took me back to the elections when the primaries were getting down to the nub and you had only a few selections. And I was telling Trump supporters that one of my main problems with President Trump was that I want to see a president who is willing to humble himself before things like the Constitution and the will of the people and the original intent of the founders and God. And I think you hit the nail on the head talking about humility. And that very well could be the determining factor as to what kind of a man he winds up being and what kind of a president he winds up being later in this first term, and even whether he gets a second term.
Absolutely. And listen, this is not a dig on Donald Trump when I say that. I think it would be a challenge for anyone in
Oh,
that
yeah.
position, but particularly Donald Trump because he was already a billionaire when he got there. He was already powerful when he got there, and his power just got magnified tremendously when he became president. Now, the only thing about him that I think in the deep, dark hours of the night when he's lays his head down, does he think to himself, oh my goodness, what in the world have I done? I think he probably has those moments. I'm sure that he has those moments where he's wondering if he's made the right decisions that have affected that he's making life and death decisions every single day,
Mm-hmm.
all day long. And anybody with any kind of conscience, which I believe he does have, is going to think about that, and is going to wonder. As brash as he is and as confident as he portrays himself, he has moments when you understand that he has a conscience and a heart.
Yes.
So, and emotion. And that leads me to believe that, like I said, when he lays his head down at night, he wonders that I do the right thing. He wants to do the right thing. He's brash, but he's not really egotistical. He's not really a narcissist. Not to me. He doesn't come off as a narcissist to me. Our
Okay.
last president, I mean, I know liberals try to say he is, but I mean, to me, Barack Obama comes off as way more of a narcissist than Donald Trump ever was. I'm sorry.
No, no, no.
Donald Trump, if you watch him, when the bill was passed, the latest health care bill, he
Right.
brought all kinds of people up to speak and take credit. When he won the election, he brought all kinds of people up to speak and take credit and talked about all the hard work that they did. That's a person who understands that he doesn't do things alone. So, you watch stuff like that. To me, you look at these little things and that
Mm-hmm.
tells you something. You ever see Barack Obama give credit to anybody but himself during his presidency? Think about it.
No, no.
Ever?
I mean, Obama seemed okay. To me, he seemed not only to be a malignant narcissist, but almost sociopathic.
I mean, I can't recall him ever saying, thanks to so and so and so and so, we were able to do this and such.
Mm-hmm.
Never, never.
Well, his speeches were all full of I, me, and other
Yes, it
such
was
first
most
person.
most irritating. Very, very irritating. But yeah, I noticed that about President Trump, which, like I said, leads me to believe that he cares about people, that it's important to him, that he gives credit where credit is due, and that those are important qualities to have. So,
Yes.
something to think about.
Now, with that background in mind, he's going to take his first big foreign trip. And one of the places he's going to go is Saudi. And you know me, I have quite the bugaboo with Islam, and for good reasons.
Yep.
And President Trump has said in the past two things. He's given two signals. The first signal he's given is he has said, and I quote, there is a problem within Islam. All right. And at the same time, though, he has said that there are Islamic countries that he does business with. Now, in thinking about influence and about his presidency in the future, we have to look at the rather disturbing fact that there are still Muslim operatives in high security positions from the Obama administration that are still in the Trump White House. Question I have for you is, do you believe that the non-Muslim influences that he now has in the White House could possibly bring him to a point where he will remove those influences and maybe understand the underlying dangers that Islam represents? And this is beyond the terror attacks.
I certainly hope so. He really needs to clean house. Part of what is going on in his administration, the many problems that he has going on in his administration, has to do with Obama holdovers and on all levels of government. Their secretaries, I will tell you, I was an executive assistant for years, and you can make a whole lot of trouble being an executive assistant.
Right.
So, if you want to, I'm just saying. So, there are a lot of people that are making trouble that they don't even know about, that they haven't even thought of, that it hasn't even occurred to them are making trouble. And they really have got to take care of that from top to bottom. As I think it was Mike Huckabee on the news this morning and said, he needs to take a giant vacuum and just get rid of them all. Sometimes it's okay to have empty offices. Just do it
Well,
because, you're doing more harm than good to yourself having those people there. You really are.
that was something else I was going to go over with you, and glad you brought it up. And I have been saying this since President Trump took office. There needs to be a night of long knives. part of this is because of exactly what you just talked about. But part of it also is because of the vastness of the government agencies, which we talked about last week. And you had a gentleman on your show who amazingly said there are people in government right now who basically just sit around with their feet on the desk. And if someone comes into them with a problem, they send them on to someone else. And the problem is that some of these people do have access to sensitive information, and they're not robots. They have political leanings, and objectivity is not the first thing on their minds. And for those of you listening, anyone that has access, any government employee that has access to records of a given department or something like that, Melanie is quite right, can cause a lot of problems just by anonymously dropping these things to a hostile media that is more than ready to sink President Trump. And these are not only Obama holdovers, these are old Bush holdovers, old Clinton holdovers, my God, old Carter holdovers. There are probably still some of them around. Um,
Right?
and they can cause a tremendous amount of trouble. So I think, Melanie, you and I both have come to this conclusion that they can call it the new Saturday Night Massacre all they want, but this needs to be done. In fact, I wouldn't blame any president for going in and just having a house cleaning when they take office, because it is their policies that the people have voted for. And we see this in Europe. This is a very similar situation. There are localized people in countries in Europe who are sick to death of everything being dictated at them from Brussels through the EU. They have ways that they like to do things in their countries, and yet the EU is micromanaging everything. It was a big reason why there was Brexit, and why people in other countries are either ignoring EU dictates or they're considering pulling out of the EU. And it is the psychology of the superstate, and I think that it's something we have to take care of now.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right about that.
Now, a lot of people have been upset because President Trump hasn't done everything immediately, certainly in regard to conservatism, that he said he would. He has put out some executive orders, and there are people like me who say that it would be nice if those executive orders were codified in law. And you see things like the travel ban and things like that that have been knocked down. And there is the talk out there that President Trump will do more when he has a more right-leaning Supreme Court. Do you think that's what he's waiting for?
No, no. I mean, for what? We already, I mean, more right leaning? More right leaning? I mean, more right leaning than what? I guess. But I mean, how long is it going to take for something to go to the Supreme Court? And what kind of things are we talking about? And listen, he's only been in office for like a minute. Calm down. Can we calm down? Just settle down. I'm just saying. Settle down for a second. I know that he made a lot of problems. The fact that he's even sticking to the things that he said he was going to do is kind of a miracle when you think about it. I think now we're like getting a little spoiled. You know what I mean?
Yes.
In a sense that politicians don't usually come in and then do exactly what they say they're going to do. He's actually done that and been on that trajectory, whereas most politicians get in there and get election amnesia. Like they forgot all the stuff that they said. So I think we have to be a little bit patient. We have to hold him to task, but I think we also have to be a little bit patient. He's barely been in office 100 days. It's a little over 100 days. So I think we need to chill a little bit. A more right-leaning Supreme Court would be good, but I don't think that we need it to be guaranteed. I don't think that we necessarily need that to get the ball rolling. I think that we need to be more concerned about holding on to our majority in both houses. That's where we need to be focused, in my opinion.
Yes, yes. Well, what you're talking about, I think, is partly because you have something over half of the people in the United States of America that haven't had anything to their mind positive happen in the federal government in something like 12 years. So to see these things, they really love them, and it's almost like a starving person at a banquet. They see all this food in front of them, and they just want to pig out. So,
Right, true.
So I think you do have a point there. I think people will have to wait a bit. I think a more right leaning Supreme Court would help with all of these Jim Crack lower court judgments that are clearly political against things that President Trump is trying to do, like the travel ban and things of that nature. That is something that I'd really like to see would be Supreme Court confirmation that what President Trump is doing, particularly involving the migration of Muslims into our country, is constitutional. Because I do believe, personally, that Islam can be determined to be detrimental to not only the government, but the people of the United States of America. There's plenty of evidence of that. So I think he could act that way, and personally, I think he should, regardless of the lower court rulings. But then again, that's just me. Now let's switch over to the biggest piece of legislation so far that has been passed during the Trump presidency. And we're talking about what's been dubbed Trump Care. It has only passed the House as of this recording on May the 16th of 2017. It isn't even done yet. So my question to you is, what will Trump Care look like, you think? And after that, how do you think Trump Care should have been handled?
I wasn't really happy about the celebration that they had on the lawn over it passing the House. I thought that celebrating was way premature because the reality is it's going to go through a metamorphosis between now and when that bill actually becomes law. It's probably not going to look anything like it looks now. So that's a problem. We have enough uninformed voters that the Democrats use in their messaging. You know, a lot of people thought that they were doomed once it passed the House, that it was going to be law once it passed the House because they're not informed. They don't even understand the way the government works. And the Republicans doing a dance like they just scored a touchdown, didn't help that messaging on the lawn. And I thought, what are we celebrating? You're celebrating that you didn't mess it up this time? That you did what you were supposed to do? That you legislated successfully? Why are we celebrating? I didn't really understand that. So I had a problem with that because, we shouldn't be giving ourselves trophies for doing what we are supposed to do, especially when they know good and well that it's not even close to over. Celebrate when you've actually done something. And let's talk about the fact that they should have had something on Donald Trump's desk on January 20th when he got sworn in.
Mm-hmm.
That's another problem. Another thing that I'm really ticked off about. Oh, that's great. You handed in your assignment. It's a few months late. You know what I mean? Like, that would be like one of my students, handing in his assignment like weeks late and then expecting me to celebrate. No, it's way late. They repealed Obamacare, 55, 60 times? What was on the repeal bills? What? I think you were in the chat roll on my show and said old barbecue recipes. It
Mm-hmm.
was hilarious.
Well,
Like, I don't understand.
Well, I
What's the
know
bill?
that Rand Paul had one, had a replacement,
Yep.
and I know Ted Cruz had one, and I know there were others. But as you say, why were none of those on President Trump's desk on January the 20th?
And that leads me to believe that whatever they were a bunch of buffoonery. That's what that's what it leads me to believe, and I don't like that thought that that's what we have going on there. It was a bunch of foolishness, but it seems to me that that's exactly what it was.
Well, how would you? Okay, let's say that you are Speaker of the House and you have the influence to steer Congress the way you want to steer it. How would you have done it?
Well, one of the things that you actually brought up when we were talking about this before the show, and I loved that idea, is that we reverse it the same way we implemented the law. The way Obamacare was implemented was in such a way that it has its roots in every part of the government, so that it would be very hard to reverse. And what you suggested is that we unimplement it, so to speak, just do it in reverse, which I didn't think was a bad idea. There were many people like the Freedom Caucus and Rand Paul. One of the reasons I like Rand Paul
Mm-hmm.
But he ticks me off when he does and says stuff like this. Just let's just do a straight repeal. Well, you can't. Like, what are you going to invent a way back machine and just like pretend that Obamacare never happened? Well, no, you can't do that. And it's horrible messaging for the Republican Party. Like, you really just want to make sure you lose the majority in Congress. I mean, that's a surefire way to make sure that happens. So it's a problem. I think we're going to end up with single payer if we're not careful.
Yes,
I
you.
don't.
Yes, you did say that, and that sends a chill up my spine because I think that would wind up looking like the National Health Service in the UK before they had the reforms.
Yeah, you're exactly right. But the way Obamacare is structured, it's like whatever way you turn, whatever thing you pull out is a major disaster for somebody. And
Mm-hmm.
that's exactly the way they designed it.
Well, yes, and to expand a little bit on the idea, I wanted to see Obamacare sunset over time. I mean, if you try and shut it off like a light, you are going to have a lot of people with no insurance. Now they can get care in an emergency room and things like that, but long-term care, forget it. If you were to reverse it, to make it sunset and give time to remove it from the agencies that it's metastasized itself into and give the insurance companies time to once again set up low expense policies for people and things of that nature, you could get us back to 0 point before there was Obamacare. People who needed it would still be able to go on Medicaid and get decent treatment. And those who could afford it could get decent health insurance at a good price, buying across state lines. Hey, where's that, by the way? Um,
Right. Yeah.
and
And
it would be all right.
curiously, no one said anything about it.
Yeah, we haven't heard a thing one about that
No.
since Trump care was passed. That seems to just be disappeared and everything.
Very strange,
Well,
if you
yeah,
ask
it
me.
is. It is, and that is something that you brought up, which I find fascinating. All of these plans, all of these health care bills that were proposed by good people, Rand Paul and Ted Cruz, of course, and they didn't seem to see the light of day when the consideration began in the House. And it really sends a disappointing picture that currently led Republican Party is less interested in resolving these problems than they are in retaining government power. And to me, that's really disappointing. And I think you're right. I think that could lead to a big loss for them. Almost certainly the Senate and quite possibly the House within the next few years. I think that they should have handled this far differently than they did. And you do bring up a good point when it comes to messaging, I have to say, because this has been one of the biggest problems that conservatism has had to face. Because with each badly crafted piece of legislation, for instance, if you just were to shut Obamacare off like a light, then you'd have the news media and Democrats screaming that once again Republicans are throwing grandma out in the snow.
Right.
Now, for the Trump presidency, and you just talked about his Twitter stuff, how important do you think messaging is, not only so that President Trump can keep on doing the things he needs to do, but so that at least some of the conservatism that is represented in the Republican Party can possibly retain power? How important is messaging?
Messaging is extremely important, and the Republicans don't seem to get it. My party does not seem to get it. I don't know why. I don't know where the disconnect is. I don't know what the problem is. But
Mm-hmm.
they really don't seem to want to get that. They don't want to understand it. And they need to start at some point because their messaging is very poor. They're always messing up the message. And it's something that the Democrats are very good at.
Oh yeah.
It's something that they are very good at. And so we've got to get our messaging. We can message the same way that they message, but we're so idealistic.
Mm-hmm.
We take such pride in being idealistic that we won't do it because we think we feel it's unethical, which it is. But we have to start taking our messaging more seriously. We just really do.
And it's something, by the way, and I don't want to interrupt you, but it's something, by the
Sure.
way, that reaches The people are reached by things like commercials that they enjoy and stuff like that, and they remember jingles and silly stuff like that. And as conservatives, we have to understand that yes, we may have high ideals, but we're dealing with a population of people, including ourselves, who actually remember things like funny commercials and stuff like that. And the Democrats know how to do this well. Would you say that the Trump White House is badly in need of new and better messaging?
Yes, they're desperately in need of new and better messaging. They're desperately in need of it. And Republicans in general are desperately in need of new and better messaging. And until we learn how to message properly, we're always going to have a problem with the American people and with the Democrats with what they do, calling us insensitive, calling us hating the poor and racist and misogynist, when they do the exact same thing
Mm-hmm.
all the time.
Yes.
All the time. Look how they treat Ann Coulter. Look how they treated Milo. Isn't he a homosexual? Isn't that homophobia?
Indianapolis, I believe it is, and
Right,
and let me throw another one in. Look at how they treated Governor Sarah Palin.
right. Isn't that misogyny?
Mm-hmm.
That's not misogyny? Oh, but it's not misogyny because what? She's a conservative, so she doesn't count as a woman. Last I checked, she's a woman.
Mm-hmm.
So it's okay when they do it. So we need to take a good hard look at ourselves and ask why it is that they get away, that it's all good for them to do that they get away with that, but we can't seem to get our messaging together and turn the tables on them because we should be able to do that. We should not allow them to get away with that. We need to start pointing their hypocrisy out in a serious way,
Exactly.
not just in memes, but in a very serious way.
Well, exactly, and using some of the same messaging techniques that they use,
Exactly.
comedy, music, and not just country music, but all kinds of music and things like that to get the message across. And the White House would not come amiss doing that. Now, I don't want to see President Trump doing a rap. Lord help, no, I don't want to see that.
No, I don't think anybody wants
No,
that.
but it would not do any harm to see people from the White House have a little bit more sympathetic message, let's say, and connect a little bit better with the people. Now, you are very much into business. Business is your thing.
It's my thing.
It is
Yes, it
your
is.
thing. You are the business diva.
Indeed. Indeed, I
So,
am.
I must ask, President Trump in the first 100 days, how would you grade him on business, and can you give an example or two?
He's done very well in business. The media gives him no credit for this. But if you look at the stock market, now you can open your 401k without cringing. You know, small businesses, of which I believe it's something like 80% of people are employed by small businesses in the United States, are optimistic because of the regulations that have been rolled back by such things as Obamacare that have been such a problem. Also, the businesses that are creating more jobs, that are investing in America, all because they know that we have a president that is pro business, that doesn't think that businesses are the devil. So when you have a president that has that kind of mentality and businesses are aware of this, then you have a positive outlook. And it's being reflected in the moves that businesses are making. Consumer confidence is up. And those are all very good signs. So as far as business is concerned, I would give him an A plus on the business side. I mean, even the things that normally the market would be sensitive to don't seem to be affecting the market like it used to. You know, usually there's like bad news overseas or something like that. The market is usually pretty sensitive to that, but it hasn't been here lately. That's how positive things are as far as the confidence in the market. It's a little bit scary because that probably means we're due for a correction sooner or later.
Mm-hmm.
But I had Didier Sornay, who's an economist, and what he does is predict risk as a hobby, but he's very good at it in financial markets. And he doesn't think that there's a huge correction coming up anytime soon. So go figure. Take that for what it's worth. Because I asked him about that. So go figure.
Right. And with this, you have more power given to the people because the people have more income coming in and they're able to direct things in their lives better on their own, which is always a good thing. Yes,
Absolutely.
power to the people. Now,
Amen.
uh, now, as we talked about earlier, President Trump is very influenceable. And
Yes.
certainly within about the past 8 to 12 years, people have kind of felt like it's not even worth it to contact the White House and tell them how they feel about things and what they want done. One of the things that I contended during the election was that this president is going to respond to the people because emotionally he likes to be liked. And I believe that it is more advantageous now than it has been in a long time to contact the White House with concerns that people have and want to have addressed. Do you agree there?
Absolutely. I mean, imagine if Donald Trump went to a rally and got booed. I think he would be so sad.
He would. Oh, yeah.
I think he would be the saddest man on the face of the earth. I don't think he would be able to deal with that very well. So he really does like to be liked. One of the things that gave me some type of peace that maybe he's going to be okay as president is his ego. The
Mm-hmm.
man's not used to failing.
Mm-hmm.
Failure is just not an option for him. And so, with an ego the size of his, and listen, he got it honest. That's not necessarily a hit on him. You know, he's
Mm-hmm.
had a lot of success. He's kind of earned the ego he has. But someone with an enormous ego like his, failure is just not going to be an option for him. And so, if the people are not happy and people are calling the White House and saying we're not happy, that's going to be an issue. And he's going to try to change. You know, I feel like he's a centrist and he really listens to the people. He doesn't really care what party they're
Mm.
in. He's a true, like, majority rules kind of guy.
Okay. More of a small d Democrat than yes. And to that, I just want to say that it is always good to be involved. But with this president, being involved might actually get you a little bit of something. And Melanie, I want to thank you for coming back, and hope you'll come back again, folks. You will hear from Melanie later this year, if not earlier, because she is going to contribute to something that I do every year. And I'm going to leave it at that. You can just kind of wonder
Ah,
amongst yourselves. But Melanie, thank you for being with me. And please tell the people once again where they can hear you.
sure. That's Money Talk with Melanie. It's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10:05 a.m. on SHR Media. You just go to shrmedia.com and click on Listen Live and Chat, and I will be right there.
That's fantastic. All right, everybody, you can get hold of me at UBG Contact on Twitter. That's where you can contact me with comments, questions, show suggestions, awesome American suggestions. Awesome Americans are coming back, people, because I love it, and I know you like it, and I'm bringing it back. And with that, that is it for this time. I very much appreciate Melanie Collette for coming on and speaking with me again, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for listening, and may your God go with you. Goodbye. The Unpleasant Blind Guy is copyright 2017. Anno Domini.